You're listening to Cinema Rex. It's an Iranian film podcast, episode 44, Parviz Sayyad's Dead End, Bombast.
Mr. Bombastics.
Fantastic. At the exact same time.
Nice.
Good morning. What's your name again? I knew this.
Asghar.
Asghar.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Asghar Jun.
What's up, Mr. Jafar? Hey, that's funny. Even Jafar Panahi, the other name is, again, one of those like stereotypical names that people use for jokes.
Yeah. And isn't Abbas also maybe?
Yeah,
Abbas
that's so
feels
funny.
like one of
Abbas, not Parviz. Parviz is like solid name. Solid name, Parviz.
Parviz is a good name.
Yeah. My uncle's name.
درود بر شما دوستان عزیز. This is the Cinerex podcast where we talk all things Iranian film, television, acting, performances, writing, directing, producing, dead ends. We talk about young love.
Getting spoiled by IMDb.
I don't even want to get into that just yet. Oh my goodness. I don't even. That's a whole thing we'll jump into soon in a few minutes. I'm Kaveh Moheba.
Moheba?
Nope.
You Kaveh Moheba?
No, because see, I actually thought the thing for that is we would talk all things Iranian film, cinema, whatever, and then we also talk about Anton Chekhov adaptations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was looking at the word Chekhov, and I said, I'm Kaveh Mohebov. I'm pretty sure I'm Kaveh Mohebi.
I'm fairly certain that I'm Farhan Moradi.
Fairly certain Farhan. That's what the kids in schoolyards call you.
The amount of times that I go places and they're like, oh, who's this for? Or who's the reservation for? Or whatever. And then I'm like, Farhan Moradi. And they're like, Moretti? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Moradi.
Yeah. I'm surprised that they don't get the Farhan wrong.
They don't even look. They're just looking for the last name, I guess.
Okay, well, you're the only Iranian I know whose name is incorrectly pronounced by both Canadians and Iranians.
Yeah, Farhan is constantly pronounced as Farhan.
Or Farhan.
Yeah. Or in English, Farhan.
Do you have anyone ever nail it the first time, like not including family members and stuff, that just like see your name in writing they're Iranian, they're just like, oh, that's clearly pronounced Farhan?
Funny enough, Iranians who've never known the name will almost always get it wrong.
Yeah.
But I have had non-Iranians get it right sometimes.
Yeah. Those damn Belgians. So good at pronunciation.
What's the worst pronunciation you've ever had of your name?
Kavaha.
Kavaha.
I'll never forget it. See how quickly I answered you that?
Yeah, that's solid. Mine was flower.
That's not even. Most of those letters aren't even there. At least the ha in Kavaha, people are getting the H mixed up. There's no L, there's no W.
It wasn't red. I was getting onto my school bus. It was like my first day with that bus driver, first day of school in a new town. Bus driver's like, what's your name? And I'm like, Farhan. He's like, Flower? I was like, no, Farhan. He was like, oh, Farhan. Okay, sorry.
Flower is a cool name, though.
It like just stuck. It's one of those things that someone says it once. And then for the next like year, I was known as Flower on the school bus because all the kids thought it was funny.
Well, it's a cool nickname. There's a great Canadian hockey player he's a goalie named Mark. Oh my God.
Mark Kavaha.
Marc-Andre Fleury. And his last name is Fleury. So his nickname is Flower.
Nice.
And it's really cool. And he's a great goalie. Nice. He's I think he's retiring this year.
Hey, next time you get a goalie shirt printed for yourself, you should have it say Kavaha Mohebov.
Yeah, Mohebov.
Kavaha Mohebov. Pretty solid.
That sounds very like Ukrainian. Let's jump into the film we chose to watch this week. I guess this officially kind of counts as our third semi-film. Right?
I feel like Parviz Sayyad would be like really pissed off to hear you say that.
Yeah. We did Parviz Sayyad's 1977 new wave cinematic tour de force called Dead End or Bombast.
Every time I hear the Persian title, I hear
Mr.
Bombast.
Yeah. And let's dive into the plot summary because there's a lot to discuss with this one. Plot summary. Based on the tale by Anton Chekhov, the story follows a young, dreamy-eyed woman living with her widowed mother in a small but pleasant flat in a cul-de-sac in the old central section of Tehran. On a rainy day while watching the street from her window, the woman realizes that a handsome man in his 30s, whom she first saw at a wedding, seems to be in the rain with an umbrella staring at their house and looking directly at her window. This strange occurrence repeats over several days, and the man continues to stand outside watching their home and following her around the city. The already self-absorbed APIC, is it APIC or OPIC?
I have no idea.
The already self-absorbed woman is thrown into a tizzy. What to do? Should she approach him or not? Why does he address her directly? Believing the man has feelings for her, she careens between being thrilled to find him popping up alongside her on a bus and feeling contempt for what she interprets as his timidity. The girl becomes undeniably drawn to him, unaware that there's much more to the story than she realizes, until she soon discovers how thin the line can be between happiness and misery. And I'll leave it there to avoid spoilers. It has no Rotten Tomato score and no audience score. So Farhan, I ask you what you think of this movie. Let me just say one thing first before you tell me. I'm going to interrupt the flow of conversation.
Tell me.
Because as you already know, as we mentioned, dear listeners to this podcast, if you have any interest in watching this movie, please avoid the logline on imdb.com. Please avoid the logline or synopsis on Letterboxd. I think it's the same word for word synopsis. It entirely ruins the dramatic shift in the last 3 minutes of the movie, which not only turns the entire story on its head, but is, a twist not exactly tantamount to Sixth Sense, but pretty up there given the context that the film was made in and the emotional 180 whiplash effect you get from the entire story. And I made the huge misfortune of opening up the IMDb to check who the writers were. And I briefly read the log line because it's 3 sentences long. It wasn't like a long synopsis that I was like, oh, let me read this entire thing. That it's the 3 sentence, and it's a 2-sentence log line at the top of IMDb that completely spoils the movie. And I almost want to say, Farhan, I should recuse myself from this podcast because my entire emotional journey of this film was upended. This is my first time seeing the film. I hadn't seen the film before. I'd only heard of the title. I'd known that this was his first attempt at making a serious film. Dramatic film, rather. And I have lots to say, but I did not experience the film it was meant to be experienced or enjoyed. And I feel like everything I say today has to be with that caveat of I think the experience was fundamentally spoiled for me. I went through Letterboxd comments, reading a lot of comments. This is a very, there's a glowing endorsement for this film by a lot of cinephiles who talk about how beautiful the film is and how much they were floored by the last 3 minutes. The last 5 minutes of this film make the movie for them. They make what they already enjoyed as a good movie to a masterpiece. That's what a lot of people say on Letterboxd. And I'm sitting here being like, well, that emotional experience was totally ruined for me. And, I want you to explain to me what you said to me in our text because I was complaining about it. But there's a man named Sam Tabibnia, and his email is here, written below. It's on IMDb, who has created the summary on IMDb. And I want to say, shame on you, Sam.
Okay, wait. In defense,
shame on what you've done.
In defense of Sam, who I'm assuming is either Sam or Samandar.
Or some mama bitch.
The thing is, what is being shown in the IMDb, usually when you go to a movie page, the blurb about the movie is the log line, which is a 1-sentence, sometimes 2 sentences to set up a movie, right?
Yeah.
It's like the preview that you see on Netflix or Prime or whatever when you're scrolling through, and it's a 1-sentence thing of a ragtag team of
misfits
break into a bank or whatever. It's just a very quick 1-sentence summary. Right? With IMDb, when there's no log line, then it defaults to a synopsis. A synopsis is a 1-paragraph summary of the setup of the film. It's what you would find on the back of a Blu-ray or a DVD.
Yeah.
And then short of a synopsis...
But it still wouldn't spoil it.
It wouldn't, correct. Short of a synopsis, then it pulls the summary, which the summary does spoil the ending. The summary is literally you summarize the entire movie, including the ending.
But it's a short summary, too. It's short enough to look like a synopsis or
sure,
a long log
but
line.
It's
3 sentences.
Correct. No, I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that, even on IMDb, it's the summary. It's not the synopsis. So why IMDb does that, why it goes, oh, there's no log line, there's no synopsis, we're going to pull the summary, I think is a failure on IMDb's part.
We should do this on our Cinerex podcast. I think we should do a service, and because it says it looks like we don't have any synopsis for this title yet. Be the first to contribute. Learn more. I think it's our duty as Iranian cinema aficionados to fill this out and give a short, not a spoiler-free logline or synopsis.
Okay. All right.
Who are you typing? Who are you writing to?
I was trying to pull up the dead end thing on IMDb, but I kept putting in numbers thinking it would autofill, and I was getting the date wrong. So then I had to go back to Letterboxd, pull the date, and then come back.
I don't even know what you're talking about. What do you mean you put in numbers?
Like the year, because there's like 500 movies called Dead End.
Yeah.
So I needed to also include the year for it to pop up.
So I ask you, Farhan June, what do you think of Dead End? I'll still reserve my emotions and feelings about it, but let's go with you first.
Okay,
what do you think of Dead End?
Before I get into it, I'm just curious. Can you tell me your feelings? Because you said that you pulled up the IMDb while you were watching the movie, right? You were like 30 minutes in?
About 30 minutes in.
Okay. Can you tell me your initial reaction of the first 30 minutes before you found that out?
Sure. So you want me to go first?
Yeah, just for that, give me the first 30 minutes. I'll give you mine and then tell me how the rest of
the first 30 minutes is so much setup that I'm always game to pay attention to the first 30 minutes of every movie. You have me at my full attention, and I'm okay with slow burns anyways.
Yeah.
So I was
You're not the type of person to stop watching a movie 30 minutes in.
No, unlike some people we know, past guests. So I was like on board and enjoying the story because I feel like there's an expert use of direction. One of the things I said that I genuinely enjoyed right off the hop was I really like the production design of the apartment and the colors of the film.
Yeah, I wrote that too.
Her apartment felt really lived in and natural. Like even like the posters, music posters on the wall. I
wrote the same thing. Yeah,
the thing of Beethoven and someone's like wailing on a guitar. And I thought like you had mentioned this once before too, but I think the lead Mary Apik or Apik, which is an Iranian name I've never heard before in my life.
She's Armenian and Iranian. That's why.
But how do you pronounce that name? Apik?
I have no idea.
I think she's quite attractive, and she has a very interesting European look to her. Like I was engaged with her look, like fascinating. Like I was really absorbed in the story because I was drawn into everything that Parviz Sayyad had created and put before us. I like the use of color. I liked a lot of cool shots using mirrors, like in her bedroom. I liked how bright the film was, especially from a movie in the 70s. Like we've seen a lot of movies from the 60s and 70s that are like black and white, bad prints, ugly. This wasn't a perfect print, but it actually was in pretty good quality decent for some of the stuff we saw. It's decent. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. And colorful, like surprisingly, is comparative, so.
Yeah. She goes by Mary Apik, by the way. I pulled it up.
Mary Apik. Okay, great. So I was on board and I was interested and engaged in the story and I was engaged with the central mystery that was happening off the plot. So I was on board and enjoying myself. The problem is, and I think we should withhold for as long as we can, if you don't want this film spoiled and you have some way of getting a hold of it, either online or at a theater screening, we will be spoiling it. I think it affects your enjoyment of the film. But again, it's a film that's over 50 years old or almost 50 years old. And, if you're just curious about it as an oddity of Iranian cinema, maybe you can just listen to the podcast and you don't mind being spoiled. But from my perspective, I maybe listen to half the podcast and then we'll tell you when we're spoiling it and watch the film and listen to the rest. But I was really upset, like annoying the ending, because I think it completely recontextualizes a lot of the story.
For sure.
It's like my interest in like just waiting for that scene to happen.
Right.
Like knowing how this was going to happen. I'm like, okay, well, how will things go down when that happens? The reveals and stuff.
Yeah. This is like when I watched Fight Club, I already knew what the ending was.
Right.
And so the movie really lost its charm on me.
That sucks.
Yeah.
How did you know that?
I was at my friend's place and it had it was out of theaters, but it wasn't on DVD yet. Okay. It was like around that time where you could watch it on the movie channel or rent it on like HBO or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're flipping through the channels and then Fight Club comes on and we put it on. We're like, oh, sick. Let's watch this. And then my buddy's like, oh, this is the movie where you find out that blank, blank, blank. And then I was like, what?
Why would your friend do that?
Well, I don't want to watch this now. And then we changed it. And I was like, and I never watched it hoping that I would like forget. Yeah. But I never forgot. And then when I eventually saw it, I was like,
you never forget.
Like the movie really isn't as good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those movies I think that like
Definitely that
The
effect of the
ending
first time watching it
definitely,
is something.
yeah, the ending definitely impacts the movie.
So you didn't have this film spoiled.
I did not. If I did, then I don't remember.
So I want to know, what did you think of the film?
I really liked it. Like you said, the production design. I made a specific note about that 360 scene in a room, like where the camera turns all the way around 360 in the center of the room.
Yeah.
It was really nice. It felt lived in, like you said. When you mentioned the colors too, yeah, not just the colors in a wardrobe and the production design, but the film stock has this look to it, with which I feel like Chess of the Wind has a little bit too, where the shadows are like kind of have like a bit of a purple tint.
Okay.
And the highlights have a little bit of like a green tint.
Yeah.
It's like there was like I remember joking with friends in college that like almost every movie on Vimeo for the longest time would like intentionally do that with the color correction to try to make it look like these like vintage indie films from the 70s.
Okay.
And it usually like bumped me a little. In this, I actually really liked it because it's authentic, right?
Yeah.
And I also appreciate that when they did the restoration of this film, that they didn't try to color correct to remove that look to the film, which does happen from time to time when people will do a restoration. They'll quickly tweak the colors and like remove that. Because at the end of the day, that's not necessarily a deliberate choice, because you couldn't color correct in the same way that you can in the digital age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You would kind of decide between the film stocks available, and you knew what kind of aesthetic it would give to your movie. And it really works here. It leans into that European French aesthetic quite a bit. There's a scene where she's in the cafe, where she first talks to the guy. That's a scene in particular that like there's an instrumental version of the Beatles playing.
Yeah.
People are drinking.
Let
A
It
lot
Be.
of people are drinking. Yeah, Let It Be. A lot of people are drinking coffee, reading these like fashion magazines.
Nobody's wearing a hijab.
Yeah, nobody's wearing hijab. And I was actually surprised. There's one scene earlier in the film where like all the women are wearing chadors, and I was like, oh, is everyone gonna have chadors? But it was only because of the rain.
Yeah, when she's on the phone, the first time she calls her friend on the phone, she's wearing one.
Yeah, and she goes to the like the print shop or the camera shop or wherever she goes in like her first scene. But the whole movie, like I'm watching it and I'm trying to figure out like, okay, what is the deal here? You know what I mean? Because she's watching this guy that she's like, I think I'm being stalked. And then her friend is like, no, I think that guy's interested in you. And then she gets so lost in her own thoughts and overthinking things, she falls in love with this guy she's never talked to. And I'm like, something is up here. And I knew what you had told me about it being spoiled. So I was like,
right.
Is this in her head? Is she like mentally ill? Is it like her long lost father? Like, did she have amnesia? Like, I was trying to figure out what was going on. Ultimately, one of the things that I suspected might be the case was essentially what happened. But I had run through like 100 different scenarios in my head of what is the relationship between the two of them. Why is this going on? Where is this headed? That by the time that it happened, I was able to essentially predict it, but I was still happy with it.
Yeah.
Had I not known that there was a twist coming, I wonder if that would have affected my viewing.
Yeah.
Because I was like looking for clues.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a bit about Parviz Sayyad, because this is a really interesting thing about how he decided to make, after a long string of Samed films. You know, he's, like we've mentioned, he's like really credited with being one of the founding fathers of the new wave movement of Iranian cinema. He's up there with like Furugh Farrokhzad and Mehr Joui and all these guys.
And Ghaffari.
Ghaffari. He's got like Ghaffari is the one. Ghaffari.
I think it's Ghaffari.
I feel like it shouldn't go understated how integral he was. And what's really interesting about him is, after sort of playfully doing this Samad kind of boyish charm, maybe at times the film was a commentary on things in Iran, but mostly it was supposed to be like, it's just enjoyment. It's supposed to be Charlie Chaplin-esque. You're supposed to just enjoy this character. But then he made a very deliberate turn to make his films quite poignant commentary on the socio-political climate in Iran at the time. And he's commented on that, and it's almost like there was a lot of growing frustration, and he it's just an interesting choice. It's almost as if like in the last few years of Charlie Chaplin's life, he would decide to suddenly make Citizen Kane or something.
Right.
I mean, this isn't Citizen Kane, but you know what I mean? It's just like very, like you've mentioned this before on podcasts where it's like he will, Parviz Sayyad will genuinely be more happier to discuss his more serious films than he will be discussing Samad.
Yeah. Well, he's a genuine cinephile. Like if you look at the movies that he's also acted in and produced on, or even things that like he might not have a credit on officially, but a lot of Iranian scholars of cinema will attest to the fact that this guy was part of the original Iranian Film Society.
Yeah.
Like the institute, the Kanun, right? Him and Ghaffari kind of spearheaded that together. And that paired with Golistan's film club, essentially. This is really how the Iranian New Wave movement came to be, right?
Yeah.
As far as I know, Dead End is kind of recognized to be his like magnum opus in a lot of ways.
Dead End?
Yeah.
And there's another film of his that's widely regarded called The Mission, which I haven't seen yet. He made it in 1983. It was the first, I think it's the first film he made in exile after leaving. The Mission is essentially about a young man sent by the Khomeini government to New York to assassinate one of Shah's former colonels. And that film is like jagged and dynamic and dark and like spy thrillery. Whereas this one's, for the most part, you're in the head of this young, dreamy-eyed teenage love. Like it almost kind of at times feels Bollywood-esque. You're sort of seeing innocent naivety of love.
That's interesting. To me, it definitely felt like a lot of these like 1970s like French romance films.
I felt it was pulpy. Although I did you notice there wasn't really any music used other than like the stuff that was like if you're in the cafe, you're hearing "Let It Be."
Yeah, there's
like
total reason
stuff
for it, which I'll get into in behind the scenes.
Cool. Okay, cool. I think the thing that made it feel especially pulpy for me, and this is one of the turnoffs for me, was the conversations with her best friend. Her best friend.
Yeah, I noted that.
The performance was like very hard to buy. And I know they weren't going for naturalistic acting, but it just really felt like the pulpiness of King of Hearts.
Yeah.
Sultan Qalaba, but without the musical charm of that film, I just felt a lot of those scenes felt like a little too
like almost
telenovela.
Like tonal. Yeah, it's almost like tonal Uncanny Valley.
Yeah,
where it's like you're tonally like, wait, is this supposed to feel like film Farsi or supposed to feel like a serious new wave? But I think that's part of how like these transitionary period of movies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you look at, for example, Night of the Hunchback definitely has a bit of both. But I think because Night of the Hunchback is so funny, we're like able to forgive a lot of it.
Yeah. Don't you feel at times like if you were to make in 2025 a spoof movie of lame rom-com tropes from like foreign films, you'd do things like this, like tonally? Like, have you ever seen that Italian Spider-Man
yeah.
It's like a thing on YouTube, but
yeah,
it's like,
I've seen it. It's not a sketch. That's like a real thing.
It's not a real thing.
It is. It's a real movie.
Where the guy smokes cigarettes and does things all the time?
I don't know. Italian Spider-Man is a real movie, Kaveh.
There's a spoof too. It's very it's like deliberately being comedy.
Maybe.
Anyways, it was Italian Spider-Man. I'm thinking it was made in 2007.
Oh wait. Oh my God, you're right. It is a spoof.
Of course it is.
Okay, never mind. This whole time I thought this was a real movie.
I love when you're so sure of yourself. You're like, Italian Spider-Man is a real movie, Kaveh. Adding my name at the end. Like, assuredly, it is not. But yeah. Anyways, it just totally felt like to me like that Italian Spider-Man thing, or the like. You remember that Simpsons episode when they all go see a movie and they see like Apu's staying with the Simpsons family, and he's like, "Let's watch one of my Bollywood movies." This was the #1 ranked Bollywood film of like India from 19. And he goes, it cuts to a woman of like she's walking the she goes, "La la 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 la, I'm in love with only Johnny." And then, do you not remember? And like Bart and Homer and Bart are like, "What are we watching?" It's just so pulpy, but like Apu's loving it. Anyways, deep cut reference from like early Simpsons seasons.
That's so funny.
I think
there's definitely a bit of that. Like there's I literally
the internal monologues.
Yeah, the internal monologues. I wrote down here about the friend. Hang on. Yeah, I wrote the dialogue from the friend on the phone is super cringe. I don't know. I find all men handsome. Like when she's like
Yeah.
trying to describe whether or not the guy's handsome, she's like, I don't know. All men are handsome to me. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cringe.
Well, and also the internal monologue was like, she goes out, she looks out the window, sees a man out the window. It's like, oh, there's a man out the window. I wonder what he's doing here. Should I go up? Why isn't he there? And it's just like, it's the complete opposite of show, don't tell. It's like show and tell,
Yeah.
and then tell some more.
Yeah.
Which is just, that experience was
Did you like
ruined for me
that?
because, no, I didn't. Even in the context of his time, I just wasn't down with how, I don't know. I just, maybe like I was in a bad mood because of it being spoiled.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, I'm recused from my opinion.
No,
this
that's
episode.
fair.
Like, I'm sorry.
I have mixed feelings on the internal monologue thing. At first, I was like, wait, what the hell? What is this monologue thing? Because it comes, like, I feel like the movie goes on for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before you hear it for the first time. And I feel like the movie would have been better served if you hear it in the first scene, like almost immediately, like right off the top of the movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the monologue.
Yeah, because then it sets the tone for like, oh yeah, you will be hearing her thoughts, her narration.
Yeah.
But eventually I grew to like it. There's that scene in the cafe where she's like trying to talk to the guy and he'll be like, do you want to smoke? And she's like, no. And then she goes, damn it. Why did I say that?
Yeah.
And like, I liked it a lot in that scene. I was like, it was really funny.
Was that supposed to be a joke? Like, I'm genuinely asking.
I think it was supposed to be like funny and like kind of cute and humorous and stuff.
Okay.
Like the humor in that scene definitely landed for me.
Okay.
Like all this stuff of like, especially because like when you watch the Sayyad movies, Parviz Sayyad is a funny guy.
Sure.
So I think like even within the serious film, those beats are supposed to be funny.
Yeah. Okay.
And it definitely plays into the inspiration, like the book that it's adapting, the Chekhov book or
Yeah.
the Chekhov short story, because that was all POV, right? So
Yeah.
I think it works for that.
I have the title here, unless you want to save it for later.
Yeah,
but-
save it for later because I have it too. But man, she looks like Iranian Shelley Duvall.
She does kind of look like Shelley Duvall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. Do you want to do like spoilers for a bit here and talk about the ending?
Yeah, we can.
'Cause I have questions that would fit in the our reactions, and I want to know your thoughts.
Sure. Oh wait, one last thing. The poetry club at the cafe.
Yeah.
Like all these like serious, like macho Iranian men sitting around a table reading poetry to each other. What did you think of that?
I didn't think that they were macho Iranian men. I just felt like they were a group of men hanging out reciting poetry, which I don't know, just contextually felt like what every Iranian I've ever known does in their spare time, especially in the 70s.
Yeah, especially in the 70s. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Was that a joke? Like, was that supposed to be a joke? I feel like a jerk for even asking that question right now.
No, I like it was serious. I appreciated it because a lot of Iranian men now, when you meet them, they're like too macho to like talk about poetry or recite poetry.
For sure. But not like my parents' generation. My dad would recite poetry off by heart all the time.
Right, yeah.
And Mehmoonies and stuff. Let's do a quick spoiler thing. We're going to talk about spoilers. If you want to, Farhan will insert a cut to something here.
If you want to avoid spoilers, cut to.
Because we learned this family dynamic is her father's passed away. Her brother is like, is he doing like a military service? Or is he just away?
I don't think it says. I think it kind of implies that he's doing military service.
Yeah.
But then you realize later that that's not actually what it was.
And so this woman is living alone with her mother. And then her brother returns from wherever he's been. And it's a nice reunion. She's happy to see him again. She's overjoyed with emotion.
Did you clock that was her brother when he first showed up?
Because I knew the ending.
Oh, okay.
Like everything for me was just like, I'm just waiting for the beats.
Because when he showed up, I was like, who the hell is this guy?
And I wondered if I would have known that had I literally thought about them. Like, would I know that this was her brother if I hadn't? Later on, she goes like, what about it? It's something like, there's like, go give this to your brother, go talk to your brother or something. So they give it. But yeah, basically what happened was the guy, she's still wondering why this guy hasn't showed up for a few days. He shows up at the door. It's a great scene, actually. This man who's been following her shows up at the door and he's like, she just offers the information of my mother's not home. I can't let you in, but please come back when my mother is home because my mom's not home. My brother's not home. and just come back home with my mom so much. She'd like love to see you, and she'll bring you in for tea. And it's not right for me to invite you with them when they're not here. And he like hears all this information, and he goes, "Okay, that's great. I'll see you again some other time."
And when he stops coming around, it's after they have their first like encounter in the cafe.
Yeah,
He asks about like her family, and then she mentions her brother, and he's like, "Oh, where's your brother?" That's when she tells him like, "Oh, he's not here. He's away."
yeah, yeah.
And then he stops coming around.
Yeah. And we don't need to belabor the point. Essentially, he shows up again the next time, and he's like, my mother and brother are home. And she goes up to go get ready. Like, she thinks this guy's going to come, like, what's the term when you, like, want to, like, ask for a hand in marriage? You want to... Khastigari. Like, she's, like, getting excited. She's going to live the rest of her life with this guy. All of a sudden,
straight
she hears
up
her mother screaming.
puts on a wedding dress. Straight up.
Yeah. And the mother's screaming, and she runs down to see that this man is here for the brother because he's arresting him because of assumedly anti-government
political activism
propaganda, and he's being handcuffed and taken away. And she runs out into the street to like ask what's happening, and the man that she's fallen in love with just simply turns back and apologizes to her. And we're left on her shocked face as we cut to credits. It was never about her. This man had been spying on the house to arrest the brother for anti-government stuff. And she had been assuming this was all about the courtship between a young man and a young woman.
Mm-hmm. I wrote, it almost feels like a James Bond film from the point of view of a naive Bond girl.
Aren't the Bond girls always femme fatale, though? With
sometimes,
like,
a lot of the times,
betray and stuff.
But sometimes it's just like a naive woman.
True.
Somewhere within the life of the target.
Yeah.
And Bond will manipulate their naivety to get what he wants.
Yeah.
And then he discards them when he gets his target.
Yeah. What did you think of that ending? I'd love to know, like, so what was your emotions in that reveal?
It was a nice payoff. It was genuinely a nice payoff because the movie is very slow. It's only 70 minutes, but it's a slow 70 minutes.
I know.
But it is
especially
a nice payoff.
If you know the ending.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine what it would be like on rewatch or knowing the ending. I feel like the whole time I would be like, all right, let's get a move on with this thing.
Yep. I'm pretty annoyed. I think that I was robbed from like genuinely experiencing.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Watching this movie. Because I kind of didn't really enjoy my experience watching it, but I also think that's not fair to the film.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to sit with all this, right?
Yeah.
Do you get the sense that this spy who was there to watch the house, do you think he's deliberately flirting with her, or is she just misreading everything? Does he know what he's doing? Is it part of it? Is he leading her on, or is he just doing the job and letting her assume whatever she wants? Like, how did you see those two versions?
I saw it as when it first started, he was just doing his job.
Yeah.
And then when she started to coyly like bait him, I think he caught on and he played it up.
Yeah. So by the second time she goes to the coffee shop and sees him, she sees him in her seat, right? And she gets
even before that, even on the bus, I think like by the bus, he's figured it out.
Right. Okay. So by the bus scene when she's saying next to her, he's deliberately leading her on?
I think so, yeah.
So the apology is for sorry for leading you on, not sorry I have to arrest your brother.
Maybe both.
Interesting. All right. Behind the scenes and trivia. Take it away, Farhan. You've done a lot of the heavy lifting this time. I've got a few to offer, but I want to hear what you got on the go.
Yeah. So I pulled some stuff from essays by Ehsan Hoshbach, who works with the restoration initiatives that we talk about a lot coming out of Bologna. He's also a documentary filmmaker. I've seen some of his work. It's really good. So in an essay that he published online, he wrote, in the opening title card, Sayyad mentions Anton Chekhov as the inspiration for the story. And then he writes, the story unmentioned is, quote, from the diary of a young girl. This is not to be mistaken with Diary of a Young Girl. This is a Chekhov short story called From the Diary of a Young Girl. But adds more ambiguity by stating that the current climate in society prompted him to tell the story, hence aiming for one of the most forward films of the 1970s about the search for and failure in finding happiness in a society built on fear and surveillance. So there's actually multiple versions of Diary of a Young Girl, or From the Diary of a Young Girl. And both of them, the way that they're written, or the two main ones that I found, the way that they're written is like dates and like a sentence of like a journal entry. One of them is like ranges from the beginning of January to the end of January. That's not the one that you want. The one that you want is like a week in October. So I have it here. It's pretty short. I might just read it if that's okay.
Yeah.
October 13th. Finally, a celebration on my street. I can't believe my eyes. A tall, handsome brunette with deep black eyes walks back and forth in front of my windows. His mustache is delightful. He's been walking for 5 days, from early morning until late at night. Always looking at our window, I pretend not to notice. October 15th. It's pouring rain since morning, and he, poor thing, is still walking. As a reward, I give him a wink and blew him a kiss. He responded with a charming smile. Who is he? Sister Varvara says he's in love with me and that he's getting wet in the rain for me. How undeveloped she is. Can a brunette really love a brunette? Mama says we should dress better and sit by the windows. Maybe he's some swindler, maybe a respectable gentleman. Swindler? What nonsense. You're so naive, Mama. October 16th. Varvara says I've ruined her life. It's my fault that he loves me and not her. I accidentally dropped him a note on the sidewalk. Oh, what a schemer. He wrote back on his sleeve in chalk afterwards. Then he walked around and wrote, I wouldn't mind, only afterwards, on the gates opposite, and then quickly erased it. Why is my heart pounding like this? October 17th. Varvara elbowed me in the chest. The vile, disgusting, envious woman. Today he stopped a policeman and talked to him for a long time, pointing at our window. He's plotting something. He must be bribing him. Pirates and despots, you men, but how clever and beautiful you are. October 18th. Today, after a long absence, my brother Sergei arrived at night. Before he could lie down, they called for him to the district. October 19th. What a scoundrel! It turns out he's been tracking Sergei for the past 12 days, who had spent someone's money and disappeared. Today he wrote on the gates, I'm free and able. What a brute. I stuck my tongue out at him. So that's the short.
Interesting. Wait, but what you read, was that the entire short, or are you reading that's
the entire thing.
Oh, wow.
That's it. It's just this one little short. But he has a few that he's like called the same thing. There's a couple other ones, but they're all pretty short.
Yeah. That's actually a pretty good short, to be honest.
I was thinking too. I was like, oh, this would make like a good short film.
Yeah, or maybe a feature film where the ending isn't spoiled.
yeah.
That's cool.
Khoshbakhт also continues saying the influence of Sohrab Shahid Saleh's in the pacing of the film and the lack of score is prevalent by Sayyad's mise-en-scène in a film mostly set in a drab room, so calculated that it reminds us how underrated a director he remains to be.
Yeah.
We need to watch some of his films too, because I don't think
I've seen Sohrab Shahid Saleh's Still Life, which is reminiscent of this. It's definitely a slow, it's one of those films that some people would be like, nothing happens in this film. Like that's definitely the reaction you'll get. I think it's a profoundly interesting film. I think it required for me like another viewing to like really sink my teeth into. But I know for a fact Afra Nariman he loves it. It's like one of his favorite Iranian films of all time. Still Life. So yeah, I could see a lot of that influence in this, especially with like the slow burn of the woman musing about what to do. That story is about an old man who lives at a checkpoint, I think, like a crossing guard sort of, like a not border, but like she lives kind of isolated. His house is like the crossing bridge, sort of toll booth. Yeah, Still Life. We could do that one for a future episode. We've mentioned this before in past, but the Progressive Filmmakers Cooperative, the PFC. So it was an attempt to create an independent film collective in support of New Wave cinema as a movement. And it began with a group of these producers, directors, cinematographers, composers. It's essentially what was like officially making the stamp of like the New Wave filmmakers saying we're here and we want a system in place that can support New Wave filmmaking. This is quoting from Hamid Nafisi's A Social History of Iranian Cinema. The news conference and the formation a month later of the Progressive Filmmakers Cooperative, PFC, Kanun Sinema Garon Pishro.
Yeah, that's the Iranian Film Society.
Officially declared the existence of a dual-track movie industry, commercial and New Wave. Members of the PFC stressed that the New Wave cinema did not pose a threat to the commercial cinema or its syndicates because While the commercial film industry put out about 90 movies annually, members of the PFC would probably only manage to make 15 films. All they wanted to do was to provide the spectators with the right to choose. In fact, they welcomed the future formation of another more progressive group to protest the PFC and bring in another alternative cinema. And the 3 films that are largely considered the first films that were put out under the PFC were Merjoui's The Cycle, Shahid Salis' Still Life, and this, Sayyad's Dead End.
Cool.
Ultra cool. In an interview about Iranian cinema in the 70s, Sayyad kind of talked about the PFC and said, in those days, making a movie such as Dead End was a huge risk, not only politically, but for the simple reason that no theaters were available to show those films for public screening. All movie theaters were either on annual contracts to show foreign films or reserved for mainstream Iranian cinema. Mainstream movies differed from new wave films not only because of their production values, but also because they lacked cultural identity. So yeah, he was part of that. Like we've talked about this again. Which episode? Probably during Night of the Hunchback we talked about this?
Probably, yeah.
He said, one lesson that I learned from Chekhov was observing the characters under equal light and allowing them to show their human qualities and even their weak points. You can see the same approach in all of my 3 films being screened at the UCLA. He was talking about this ahead of the UCLA screenings. He said you could see this in Dead End, The Mission, and Checkpoint. Both Sayyad and Opek both live in LA now. This was, in his opinion, Sayyad says, maybe this is fact, I'm not sure. He says, this was the Dead End was the first Iranian film to be shown under Khomeini's rule, but was later banned because its heroine speaks freely about love and is seen in public without a chador. The poem that the men read in the cafe is the same poem you hear at the end. You know when it freezes on her face?
Yeah.
It's called Ay Ishq by Ahmad Shamlou, famous poet, 20th century poet, and fitting, I guess. That's it. Critical reactions. As I mentioned, this film does not have a Rotten Tomato score. It did win at the Moscow International Film Fest. It won the 1977 winner for Best Actress for Mary Opek, and it was the nominee for Best Picture, the Golden Prize at the Moscow International Film Festival for Parviz Sayyad.
Apparently, that was the first win for an Iranian film from the Moscow International Film Festival.
From that specific festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I don't know why that's a big deal, but like when I was searching online, it was like
No, it's
heralded as like
interesting, yeah. All right, let's go deeper analysis. What do we have here to break down? I have a few quick thoughts, but the one thing I did want to mention was a quote you had already mentioned from Ehsan Khoshbakht. This film is about the search for and failure in finding happiness in a society built on fear and surveillance. Like, as you just said that, I was like, that kind of hits home essentially what my thoughts were about this film. One of the things I really found interesting that Hamid Nafisi said that I really liked a lot was Dead End posits Iranian society under the Shah as a claustrophobic total prison, a panopticon, whose inhabitants suffer constant police surveillance. Do you know what a panopticon is?
No, I was about to ask.
So I looked it up, and I remember learning about this in philosophy later on. It's the 18th century idea created by Jeremy Bentham, which is the idea of a circular prison where the guard is in the center, but the guard is essentially behind like one-way mirror that cannot be seen in, so that all the inmates are only being watched by one guard, but they never know when the guard is looking at them. So they never know when they're being watched in a circular prison. So it's almost like this like philosophical theory that you can like, you're trapped by your own unknowing of when you're not being seen. So none of the inmates ever know when they're being seen. As a philosophical experiment idea that like the invisibility of the guard makes the paranoia of the prisoners real, and they are almost imprisoned by their own fear rather than a real prison. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this panopticon surveillance is something that there's been essays written about how this during the Pahlavi era, specifically towards the end, was becoming prominent. The fear and paranoia of being watched, especially when you might not have really been being watched, was growing. So truly feeding into that paranoia, but also paranoia suggests that there's nothing to fear. You're being paranoid. Whereas the fear was real and increasing, but wasn't necessarily as prevalent as people might have thought it was. So it's this interesting idea that like citizens were being increasingly imprisoned by their own fears more than being imprisoned by the watchful eye surveillance. But like you'd hear that 1 in 50 stories. So it was just relevant enough that you were getting a little bit scared about being open about your thoughts. What I think is interesting is this film was twice banned. This was banned by the Pahlavi era when it first came out, and then banned again by the Islamic regime for different reasons.
There's so many of these movies that we're watching that happens, eh?
Yeah. But this film was banned for different reasons. Like, the Pahlavi government did not like criticism, and then the Islamic regime was like, well, why has she got no hijab on? And talking about love freely.
Yeah.
So this idea is really interesting. There's a really interesting essay that was written, you can find online if you Google panopticon surveillance on Iranian women during the Pahlavi era. Panopticon surveillance on Iranian women during the Pahlavi era with concentration on the visibility and invisibility paradigms. The Case Study of Dead End by Parviz Sayyad. Yeah, I mean, those are my deeper analysis. It's just kind of like the thing you were saying about how this film is about the intrusiveness, paranoia, and surveillance of an increasingly a watchful state was interfering with the hopes, dreams, and love life and happiness of the younger generation. Sayyad views Opic's often humorous carryings-ons and endless musings with affectionate compassion, and there's every reason to assume that along with evoking that sense of isolation we have all experienced, he has in mind only a kind of satiric commentary on the problems of young, educated Iranians coping with the new Western-style freedoms, especially those between men and women. But abruptly, that cul-de-sac where Opic lives takes on a symbolic meaning, as do countless other details. So also, like, think about the metaphor of a dead end too, right? Like, it's not just a reference to the street she lives on. She lives at a cul-de-sac, but it's like he's suggesting that like we're headed towards one, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe it's being again, it's being
foreshadowing,
prophetic.
Also, her life too, right?
Yeah,
like she went to high school, didn't know what she wanted to do in life, and now she's essentially doing a victory lap.
Yeah. The other thing that I had read too was like, oh, it's not ironic that the book that he's reading that she wants to get a copy of is essentially a biography written by Howard Fast about Thomas Paine, who was like one of the founding fathers of America. I couldn't really figure out what the connection was, but I know Thomas Paine was like essentially English-born American founding father, and he was a French revolutionary inventor. And his famous book is called Common Sense. I remember studying this in university. And it's essentially an argument for why America should get its independence from England. But I don't see the connection. Like, I don't understand the philosophical or thematic connection to this story.
I don't know it, so I can't comment on it.
He chose it. Like, the book was called Citizen Tom Paine, and that's the book that he's carrying. Do you remember the scene? There's a whole thing about it.
Yeah. She like goes to the bookstore and she's trying to get it, and they're like, "Oh, we don't have that one. We have his other books, though."
Yeah, and so I couldn't figure out the connection. Listeners,
I wonder if part of it is like,
you know.
Because she's presented as being very naive, right? Which I feel like is likely commentary on a lot of students at the time who were not activists, who were not engaged, who were like, everything's great, like everything's awesome. Right, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I think it was commentary on that sort of person when she like actually makes an effort to learn about it and she's doing it to seem like interesting to this guy. Yeah. She can't get access to it, which might be commentary on how like some of these students who were like fair weather philosophers or whatever might not have been capable of learning what they needed to learn to emancipate themselves from the monarchy.
But I thought she got a copy of the book.
Did she? I thought she got a copy of a different book by the same guy.
I think she gets 2 or 3, and then he's like, we also have this one. Because she acts, I know there's a reference to, she thinks at first that he's reading Faust, but it's Howard Fast. I don't know. That was lost on me. I'm too much of a dum-dum to know what they're talking about using their fancy books. The other thing, though, that I feel like I might push back on what your argument, too, is I think this woman is, like, being very westernized in her approach to love. It's almost very European and, like, you know, it's like free love. And this, she doesn't look like an Iranian woman wearing a chador. She's like, she looks like a French girl, you know, like very, very Western European. And with that came, for lack of a better word, I'm sorry to say that, a certain interest in enlightenment and philosophy, philosophical thinking, a lot of things that Pahlavi government would not necessarily endorse. I know, like, reading about communism was a crime punishable by death. Karl Marx's works were not allowed to be, that was contraband, essentially.
Right, yeah.
So I wonder if, like, maybe it's just about the, like, she is like, I'm in love, la, 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 but she's also, like, kind of having this, like, philosophical awakening. It's almost like a coming of age where
Yeah.
the death of innocence is approaching her now too.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of like innocence lost.
Yeah, innocence lost, and like that idea of ignorance being bliss, or like she's like now learning about the world, and it's going to be hard and cold, and the truth is going to hit her in the face.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my deeper analysis. Anything you'd like to tack on to what this film is truly about, symbolically and thematically at its grassroots level, Faran June?
Just that I think that she's supposed to be a stand-in for that generation
Yeah.
of like students who are maybe more naive, and a lot of them are given like harsh wake-ups. You know what I mean?
I could feel that like there's a good chance if this film had been widely distributed in theaters, a whole generation of specifically young women seeing this movie and being like, finally, I see myself on screen.
Yeah, I could see that.
But okay, cool. Let's move to best scene. What's your favorite scene of this film, Faran June?
I've referenced it a lot. You could probably guess it, huh?
The cafe?
Yeah, it's the cafe scene.
Which visit, the first or the second?
Mm,
When they're talking, they only talk in the first visit.
the first one. And it's like, it's kind of broken into.
So what are they talking about in that scene?
There's like two halves to the scene.
Half scene.
Yeah, half scene. There's the first half where they don't talk to each other. They sit across from each other.
Yeah.
There's her internal monologue. The Beatles are playing. She's like listening to those guys like reading their poetry to each other.
Yeah.
That's the one that's the part of the scene that I like the most.
I
was
see,
that
yeah.
part.
Right, because it gives you the glimpse of what the type of Iran that Iran could have been, sort of,
Maybe, I don't even know if it's like what Iran could have been, or if it's just like, oh, this is what Iran wants to be, or like what the students, what the intelligentsia think Iran is becoming, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which is also interesting because a lot of people during that time, a lot of the intelligentsia was like, oh, we're becoming too westernized.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see like two sides of that.
Yeah.
So for that, the general tone that scene builds, I think was really unique to see.
For sure.
It was like kind of novel in Iranian cinema for me.
Yeah, it is cool. That is nice. I probably should have thought of something like that similarly. I actually went with a more cinematically looking at the blocking and the shot choices and actually the dialogue. To me, one of my favorite scenes was that scene when he's at the door that I mentioned earlier, where she says, "I'd love for you to come in. I can't have you in. It's not right. My mother's not home." And I like it because from a writing standpoint, he does a very, very clever thing. And that is she offers up the information that my brother's not home either.
Mm-hmm.
So that he doesn't have to ask, is your brother home, to spoil the big twist, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, my mother's not home. My brother's not here either. Because they're not here, I can't let you in. Come back and she'll offer you tea and then we can continue this courtship or whatever. And then he just looks at her and says, okay, sure. And do you remember that shot of when it closes? It's the doorway and they're both on two sides of the door. It's a beautiful shot. And actually, now that I think
even
about
when she answers the door, she answers the door and like steps out like super quick, and she's like immediately face to face with this guy.
Yeah.
In this like very
fully.
direct profile shot.
Yeah.
It's tense. The tension in that scene, like you can feel it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's my best scene. Damn, that's poetry, where we talk about our favorite quotes of the film. I have a cop-out answer.
Is it a line of poetry from somebody else?
Yeah, I couldn't I had a difficulty kind of when they're getting to these long monologues about love to kind of grasp what they're saying. And if I was being fully honest, it just wasn't like, I don't know, I had a hard time. So I just have to go, damn, that's literal poetry. And it's the Ahmad Shamlu, I Ishq at the end.
آی عشق آی عشق چهره آبیت پیدا نیست و خنکای مرهمی بر شعله زخمی نه شور شعله بر سرمای درون آی عشق چهره سرخت پیدا نیست.
Sorry, it was just this, like, I was in a mood, man.
Boo!
Yep, I ruined it. What about you?
That's not even a quote from this movie.
I know. It's a literal poetry, though.
What, do you have a time code for me? Mine is at 12:22. The girl says, I wish I could write poetry. And like in her monologue, she's like, in her internal monologue, she's like looking out the window and like pining for the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And then internally her voiceover is like, I wish I could write poetry. And then she goes on this super long, eloquent poem to herself. And then she's like, no, that sucks. And I'm like, what? That was actually like pretty solid.
کاش میتونستم شعر بگم. وقتی عاشقی در کوچه داری که به پنجره اتاقت چشم دوخته است، جای آن است که احساس خوشبختی کنی و خود را تنها نپنداری. نه، هنوز خیلی کم داره.
Was that when she's
in her bedroom? She's like staring out the window.
Yeah, that is a
It's
funny
before
scene,
they
I remember.
actually meet.
Yeah.
It's like early on in the film.
Yeah.
When her friend convinces her that, oh, this guy who's stalking you is in love with you, most likely. And then she starts to overthink it and she's like, you know what? I love him too.
Right, yeah.
She's like almost like convincing herself to fall in love with this guy.
Yeah.
She's like trying to force herself to write poetry about this guy. She sees that her friend is engaged and getting married and she's just like chasing after that thrill.
Yeah. Favorite performance? We should also mention, by the way, we haven't mentioned the other actor's name yet once. The two leads of the film, they both do, good job. Parviz
Bahadur. Yeah.
Bahadur is plays like the guy from the window watching her, and as we mentioned before, Mary Opik is the woman in love. Also, her mother is played by someone named Opik Yousefion. So I've never heard the name Opik before, and in this film, 2 of the 3 leads have it in their name somewhere.
Interesting.
Apick.
Someone's gonna be like, that's her real mom, you idiots.
No, but it's like for her, it's the last name, and for the other one, it's the first name.
I don't know.
Okay, cool. Favorite performance? I just give it to Mary Opik.
Yeah, me too.
She's got things going for her that's pretty charming.
Pretty solid. And that scene when she's like reading the book and crying, yeah, that was pretty solid.
Yeah, that was actually quite good. Festival of Cons. My biggest con is IMDb for robbing me of the enjoyment of this film. I will also add, I think that friend, like, could they have not spent a few more times, like, just like cast it like slightly, like, I don't know. She's in a different movie, I think. She like missed the assignment.
Yeah, she very much played it like a film party.
Fully.
I have like 2 cons.
Great.
One of them is like kind of general and one's a little more specific. The more specific one is like sometimes there's weird jump cuts.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of a take where he'll like stitch 2 lines from the same shot, but they're different takes together. But it's like, why didn't you just cut to something else so that you could cut back instead of having a jump cut?
Yeah.
There's a couple of those. And then also, I know I mentioned that it was like interesting to see everything have a little bit of that like European polish. It was a little too much for me. It was like like every single character that he casts, they all look like white Europeans. Which, yeah, you'll find the occasional person in Iran that looks like that, especially in the north.
Well,
but
who else
like,
was in the movie that looked white?
Her mom
Like
looks
friend?
white. The friend looks
her
white.
mom, yeah.
A bunch
The
of the
guy
people
doesn't. The man.
that's like the only person who
The
doesn't.
villain.
There's like tons of other people that she meets that like, yeah, that there's something to be said about that. That the villain, this government agent guy, is the only one who like straight up looks Iranian.
Yeah.
And I wonder if part of that is like low key this need for a lot of Iranians to feel like we're only legitimate if we can port and pine to like Europeans or come off as European or come off as white or Western.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've accused Kiarostami of doing the same a bunch of times too, because it's like, look, if you want to hire one actor who like looks like that, that's one thing. But when it's like your entire cast, it definitely feels deliberate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for me. That's it for my cons. I don't know. Did that bump you? Did it stick out to you? Were you like, why does everybody look white?
I didn't really notice it beyond the mom as much. I thought beyond the main girl. I didn't think the mom or the friend I think they looked pretty Iranian in my opinion.
You think so?
Yeah. Double feature lineup. I would pair this up with Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's solid. That's really good.
Though it's different entirely. It's about like tension and suspense of observing something or someone through a window.
It's like reverse Rear Window in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So like I'd pair the movie up and call it like Windows 98. No, Windows 77.
Solid.
Wait, what year did Rear Window come out?
think
Let me
it was
check this
77.
out.
Oh,
yeah,
Rear
54.
Window.
No, it's 54.
I thought you were talking about
Yeah.
Dead End.
Forget it. So yeah, Rear Window and Dead End.
Nice. Mine is The Graduate
Okay.
because it's all about coming of age and like a naive person who's like a naive like young person who's being taken advantage of
Ah.
in a scenario by someone who does know better, who semi grooms them
Yeah.
because she's only like 17.
Yeah. Good call.
See, it's not always Batman Begins.
Can this film be a Hollywood remake? I say I actually kind of want to see an updated version of this film.
Me too.
I would even let Parviz Sayyad just redirect it. I know he's up there in age, but I kind of want to see this film. I think this film, I could really enjoy an updated version. I'd be excited to hear that there's a new one.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You put our guy from the last episode in as the spy. What's his name? Like that's how I would do it. Like Sheila Vand as the girl.
Yeah.
Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. And then I'd put Shahab Hosseini as the agent.
Solid.
And Sheila Vand, yeah.
I feel like we could like make this like ourselves.
Yeah. I'll play the girl.
I would if it's gonna have the same like exact tone and pacing, I would rather see it remade as a short. But if it's going to be made into a feature, I would want it to be more like when she's like falling in love and pining over him. I would love if it was more like upbeat and like played up more like it's like a quirky rom-com.
Yeah.
It like feels like you're watching one kind of movie, and then when the twist happens, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It might even be interesting if instead of like arresting him and taking him away, if in the end of the film he like comes in and kills him and then leaves.
Final thoughts and grades. Again, I feel this is unfair, but I did not enjoy my experience watching this film.
Yeah, fair.
It really recontextualized the entire plot by knowing the ending. And like you said, it is a slow burn, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with slow burn, but like slow burn for a film that you know a major plot twist is happening for your first time watching it. It affected the pacing. It affected my interest in the love story because I knew, like, knowing where the other guy's intentions are and where this is all heading really just kind of makes you impatient with her love for him.
Yeah.
I think it's still a groundbreaking film, and it's a very important film in the pantheon of Iranian new wave cinema. I am not discrediting the film. I actually think he did a really interesting, great job directing this film. Like I said earlier, like this shot, there's a lot of cool shots of her reflection in the mirror in her bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Thought was cool. Shots of her kind of sitting by the windowsill. Beautifully directed and like sort of staged. The cinematographer, by the way, I should mention, Hushang Baharlu is the cinematographer of this film. This guy is like considered one of the main DPs of new wave Iranian cinema. You know what other film he DP'd that we both have done an episode on, and we really enjoyed the cinematography a lot?
Chance of the Wind. We talked about it.
Oh yeah, right. Well, that was a waste of excitement. So yeah, I still think beautifully shot. I think the acting could left some room for desire, and I think the film probably is better served not having known that ending. And even on rewatch, like if you know the ending on rewatch, at least you still have that experience of the first time. So yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know where to leave this, but I'm somewhere between like I think I'd give it a B-.
I feel like that's fair.
Yeah, like it's like I feel like C would be quite insulting. Like it's not a bad movie at all. It's not even a long movie. It's an interesting movie that has something to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel had I not had that experience, if that twist really hits, I'd probably like straight dab call this somewhere in the A's. If you really are like caught off guard and I mean, because you said you kind of saw it coming, and you also, in a way, you probably had it spoiled too because you're now waiting for the spoiler.
I was waiting for some kind of twist.
So I inadvertently spoiled it for you because knowing that there's a spoiler or something like a twist. It's
but
just
I will say that like knowing that there was something coming probably actually made it a little more enjoyable.
Okay, yeah.
Because I feel like if I didn't know that there was something coming at the end, that the whole time I'd be like, this is a really weird movie and it's very slow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But knowing that something was coming kept me a little more engaged. But I feel like if I knew exactly what was coming, I would have been like bored again.
Yeah. So again, my final caveat is I'll give it a B minus with the caveat that I fully, if my grading offends you on this film and you think it's a masterpiece, I genuinely feel my opinions of this film should be recused because I didn't see this film properly.
I'll be honest, Kaba, I feel like your grade is pretty fair. I feel like you've corrected for the spoiler pretty well.
Well, what do you give this film?
I think the general setup is pretty solid. I think the twist is good. I have issues with some of the pacing. The beats themselves are well placed. Like all the story beats that happen are good and they're well placed. That being said, like you also have to give a lot of that credit to Chekhov because all the main beats are lifted straight up from the Chekhov story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Overall, I wish the film played up the lovesick energy a bit. Like maybe more Beatles music and like some kind of exciting montage. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like I would have even loved to have seen her like she goes looking for that wedding dress that she has, you know what I mean? Or she's like, when she's going to get the book, like maybe that's more of like a fun montage instead of just like she quietly goes into a thing and like gets the book and comes home. Like play some of that.
Jump in on something? What you're saying right now makes me think this is a really interesting idea.
Mm-hmm.
If you said, remember we talked, going back to can this be a Hollywood remake?
Yeah.
Play up that idea of a rom-com. And I think one of the things that could actually work. No, I'm saying, listen, I'm saying play it up like you're saying. But I'm saying that one of the things that could actually be working as a festival of cons is play up the guy's flirtation with her. Like he isn't really flirting with her enough for me to be like, am I sure he even knows what's happening? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What if his character was really like, I'd like to go hang out with you again. He brings her flowers. They go for a walk on the streets together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If he really leaned more into like the flirtation and like really made it seem like he was invested in her and interested in her, that heartbreak would feel that much more profound. That would feel like way more betrayal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that could have been done, and in a remake could be really interesting.
Play up the idea of it being like a James Bond from the perspective of like a naive Bond girl even more.
Yeah, he's a honeypot.
Where it's like more deliberate.
He's honeypot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted because I got excited with this idea.
No, all good. Even to the extent of the way that the love montages are done in Downpour, right? Like when he's doing the training to try to like beat up the guy or to like win her interest or whatever.
I love that movie.
Like a little bit of that, right?
Totally.
That's like the one thing that I felt was missing.
Yeah.
Some of that energy would have been really great to really earn the running time, which is weird to say because the run time's only 75 minutes.
Yeah.
Or keep the same pacing and vibe.
Yeah.
Don't add anything to the story, but cut it down to like a 25-minute short.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that being said, I am going to give the movie a B, which means that our Cinema Rex show average for Dead End is B-.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is pretty fair.
Dead End unfolds as a seemingly simple love story between a young woman and a mysterious stranger who appears at her window. Beneath this intimate encounter lies a taut exploration of the unspoken tensions within 1970s Iranian society. Perhaps a statement on how naive and innocent love faces unbearable reality. Despite the film being deeply impactful and unique, Dead End faced the same unfortunate fate under both the Pahlavi regime and the post-revolutionary government. It was banned. Despite being a standout in Iranian cinema, the film was denied the chance to be screened in either political system. Unlike the comedic films featuring Sayyad's famous character Samad, Dead End is an intellectual piece with a seemingly simple yet profoundly deep narrative, and its jaw-dropping twist was rarely seen in Iranian stories at that time. Dead End has a poetic beauty and a leisurely pace that allows for the utmost subtlety and ambiguity. It is a film that says nothing directly, but implies everything about the dark side of existence under the Shah. Farhan June, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this podcast today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kabe.
Truly appreciate the time you've put in for us. You know how I feel about you, don't you?
Unfortunately.
To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Cinerex Podcast, or follow us and, like and subscribe. I hate plugging social media so much. Like, I don't like asking anyone for anything. But do it, it just helps us, sell mattresses or something. I don't want to sell mattresses.
Like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends.
Yeah. And to everyone else, Be'omid Didar.
Bye. Music for Cinema Rex was written and performed by Sohail Sadinejad.